Based on the title of this video, I'm assuming that most of you know what we're going to be talking about. Unless you're blind, in which case we're talking about the Thunderbolts. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. My name is Aiden, and I'm baffled by how good the Thunderbolts actually was. I have so many different things that I want to say about the Thunderbolts, but mainly I want to talk about the themes and the characterization of every character throughout this entire movie. The themes of overcoming trauma and depression and insecurity and really just redeeming yourself entirely from all the bad things that have gone on in your life is just done so well with these characters. I think using the characters that we've built up over about 10 movies and a couple different shows really honestly feels like an early Marvel movie, because we are going back and we're building on characters that we already know some stuff about. And if I'm being honest, I might like this movie a lot more than the original Avengers movie. I know. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I think that Thunderbolts took characters that we knew a little bit about, and then they really developed them and made them more three-dimensional and fully rounded out their entire character arcs. I mean, they really just took characters that people didn't care about originally and thought that they didn't really matter to the story, and then brought them all together and put them all on the big screen again. Overcoming trauma, depression, and pain is something that I love to see in modern media, because we don't often see it. Well, okay, we do often see it, but we don't often see it dealt with as extensive as the Thunderbolts deals with it. Like, the Void is literally a metaphor for Bob's depression as he's growing up and all the abuse that he's suffered over his life. Throughout this movie, in specific scenes, we can see all the characters deal with their trauma in separate ways. They all have different lives and they've all been through different things, but they're all coming together in the end. And in the end, it just tells a great story to go along with all these characters. With Alexei, we can see that he very obviously dealt with a lot, and being treated horribly by the government after committing your life to the government put him in such a position where he thought that he was inadequate for anything, and that he didn't even think that he could help Yelena with anything in her life, or that he didn't have much that he could talk to her about after Natasha's death. So he turned to drinking and being alone. But we can see directly with Yelena in this movie that it was so obviously a wrong decision to really just neglect her and push her away. She was raised from childhood to be an assassin and to be the best widow for Russia, really. She made horrible choices as a child, but that wasn't her fault. She was being manipulated mostly. But even with that, as she's grown older, she sees the wrong that she was dealing out to the world, and because of that, she is dealing with all this depression of realizing how bad of a person she really was growing up. So she drinks and she works and she kills, and then she goes home and she drinks some more, and she really just does the exact same thing that Alexei's been doing for the last year or two since the end of Black Widow or whatever it's supposed to be. She didn't have her father to help her through it. She didn't have her mother to help her through it. She didn't have her sister to help her through it. She had no one. She was left alone, and nobody really reached out to her, and she didn't really reach out to anybody else because she thought if they reached out to her, then they'd want to help her, and the same went for everybody else besides Natasha. Obviously, she was dead. With John and Ava, we both see that they directly deal with their actions on the screen. John's dealing with losing all the respect that he worked so hard to gain, and all the actions that he did to be a good man, and now this one mistake that he made, which was incredibly brutal and bad, is letting him spiral down into the depths of despair and really just bringing out the worst version of himself, where he kills and he has no remorse for it, and he doesn't really try to have remorse for it. He's just a killer. He's just an assassin. He's just a US agent. However, he's not unsympathetic. Like, you can still sympathize with his actions, because he loses his family from this action. He loses his respect. He loses his title. He loses pretty much everything, and he's just trying his best now that he has basically no one. He really feels like he has nothing left to lose. Ava's small role throughout this movie didn't really bring much growth to her character, but it did show that she can still work as a team and she can do more than just be an assassin or be a murderer or be more than just a lab rat like she was being used before. Calling back to her previous character arcs of showing that she was such a tragic character that she was exploited after an accident turned her into some sort of superpowered being, and realizing that she's still doing all those things where she's being used as a guinea pig and she's just being used to assassinate other people for Val's own agenda. She was ostracized and villainized because she got so sick of being used as a puppet, and her only option was really left with being another person's puppet. With Bucky, it's hard to elaborate more on his character because we've already elaborated on it for the entirety of the MCU. But they do try to put him in a mentoring position where he's trying to teach the Thunderbolts that there are more ways to move on from their old selves and their old actions. And his role, though small, is just to show everyone that you don't have to be that worst version of yourself, and those actions don't define who you can become. Now, let's talk about the one character that I haven't mentioned at all up to this point. Bob. Bob's entire character, his entire identity, isn't being one of those perpetrators of pain. It's him being the entire victim of the pain. Bob was beaten by his father, he was treated like trash for his entirety of his life, and when he finally tried to make something of his horrible life, he was killed and left in the trash like he was garbage. But of course, because of Thunderbolts, we know that it didn't take, and he's not dead. He came back to life with all the powers of the Century. But before, he didn't even know he had died. All the issues that he had throughout his life, they all manifested into this deep, dark depression for him, and before he knew it, he had powers. He was invincible. He moved as a distraction, attempting to commit suicide before he knew that he had these powers in order to save the others, to let the others live. But of course, it doesn't take because of his invincibility. And then Val manipulates the trauma that he already has, and it turns him into a hate-mongering machine, creating maybe one of the most menacing and terrifying villains of the MCU thus far. Century's terrifying void, being a manifestation of all the grief that he's been through, showed us what could happen when you treat someone who is already going through a lot like trash in society. And then when they're given power, a lot of people would think that they have the right to maybe bring all that hate that they have been dealt back into the world and bring it back out on the world. And that's what's so amazing about this movie. The Thunderbolts come together and they defeat the Void, and how do they do it? They beat it with love, with compassion, with friendship. If you think that the Void should have been beaten in either way, I just wanted to say that I humbly think that you are very, very wrong. Bucky sees the pain that Bob's going through when he's attacking himself, and he sees all the self-hatred that he really dealt out on himself after the Winter Soldier's actions. He helps Yelena get to Bob and soon follows John, and then Bucky, Alexei, and Ava. They all come together in the end, and they all show Bob true love and compassion. With the end of this movie, it really shows everyone who was watching it and paying attention that the only true way to deal with your depression and trauma is to lean on the others around you and not push everybody away. I've seen so many reviews about this movie come out already saying that the movie was trash, that the storyline was bad, or the chemistry wasn't strong, or that the jokes were in the wrong place, or things like that. But I just want to say that the story was phenomenal, the chemistry was like watching a family come together in the end, and the jokes were placed in the correct spots, I feel like. They had their serious scenes when they needed them, and then they had the joking scenes when they needed those, too. This movie was a beautiful mental health awareness movie that really just cares about the characters and really just loves to build on characters. This really just takes the problems that I had with the Eternals movie, and it absolutely crushes it entirely. It builds characters and it uses ones that we've met before to really come together and build this family-like team. All of these characters have redeeming qualities about themselves throughout this movie and all the other projects that they've been featured in before, but it also shows how awful that they were to other characters or other side characters or even just people in general. You can love these awfully flawed characters because they have such beautiful stories and beautiful arcs. I love it and I love them. One thing I do hate about it is that they keep calling themselves the New Avengers. But hell nah. Just be the Thunderbolts. Sam's got the Avengers covered. Okay, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the Thunderbolts as much as I did, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments. You can check out my other socials and videos, which are both on the screen now. Okay, bye now.